Hello, welcome back to Catholic Reboot. This is episode 17. This is part two of the church councils. And before we get into this, I want to just kind of kick it off with a comment or two. I'll get people that will say to me, why are you doing why are you doing this podcast at all? And it came about for various reasons. But one of the more compelling reasons is I don't know what's happened. I kind of feel like Rip Van Winkle to a certain degree. I see people that I've known who I never really saw practice the faith at any great depth when I was growing up, and for some reason over the last 5-10 years, these people now have found Jesus, and remarkably, they found him outside the Catholic Church, even though they were raised in the faith. And it goes in line with other things I see. A lot of people do what I call or practice the you should approach to everything. You should listen to this minister, or you should read the Bible, or you should. And I think, well, where were they? I don't know, back in the 70s and 80s. What were they doing? Were they learning their faith? Were they doing the deep dive in their faith? Even more so, were they defending their faith? A lot of these people, they weren't doing any of that. And nothing bothers me more than you should people. It irks me. When people will talk to me about business or real estate and they've never done any of it, never started a business, never bought a property, let's say, right? But they all of a sudden have this divine knowledge and, this is what you should do. It's the same thing with the faith. St. Francis had said that if he saw a priest and an angel walking down the street, he would salute the priest, because obviously the priest has the sacrament of holy orders, right? I switch that up a little bit based on my experience, and I'm going to go all the way back to the 70s, okay? So this isn't any shallow experience. If I saw a good holy man a layman walking down the street, and I saw a regular priest walking down the street, I would salute that good holy man first. And you're going to say, well, that's a terrible thing to say, that the priest has, holy orders. I've seen so much growing up as a Catholic, and especially the attacks not only outside the church, but inside the church. I've seen priests throwing away our gold bar, I call it the gold bar standard, for 10, willy-nilly. A lot of cowards, I'll be honest with you. And then I see a good holy man like my dad fighting tooth and nail through the 70s and 80s to keep this deposit of faith that he was raised in, okay? And why am I bringing it up with the discussions of the council is because throughout our Catholic history, there has been good and there's been bad. There's been heresy. Some bad came from what was perceived as good religious people, and then it had to be corrected. Okay, I think today what we're seeing is, if the Catholic Church is to be saved. And we all know Christ said he will never abandon his church, right? So I don't mean we're going to save it. I'm saying that if there's any divine inspiration, I really think Christ is looking to the layman. I feel the laymen will be the ones to stand up and do the hard work once again. Now, you may say, well, why is this? Because that's what's been happening since Vatican II. It's surely not the priests. Surely not the cardinals and bishops, and sadly, definitely not the popes. It's good, holy laymen standing up saying, we ain't doing this. We're not going any further. We're going to fight. And what sickens me is that So many Catholics, when the going gets tough, allow these heretical faiths to come in and scoop them right up. How can you believe in a church that has pedophilia? How can you believe in a church that pays for indulgences? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. We go back to the very beginning of the Catholic Church, and we say it was founded on Christ. We knew it was capable of being corrupted, but we're going to fight the good fight. We ain't running out the side door when things get tough. Let the priests, let the cardinals, let the bishops, and let even the Pope run away. We ain't running. And for any of the Catholic faithful that want to be treasonous and go to these compass ministries, these born-again, phony faiths, I say to you, do yourself a favor. If you were born in the Catholic faith, take a big pause and go back and learn your faith before you run away, because the fighting is going to get tougher. And we want to know who's in our camp. We need fighters. The greatest saints of the Catholic Church are going to come out now. They're going to be the ones that are going to be the ones on the battlefield right now. And there's big battles to come. And we need our deposit of faith even more for our kids and grandkids. Need to get our head right, okay? Now, how much older? I practiced accounting 36 years. I've done a lot of different business deals. I'm getting to that point in my life where I'm going to be okay, and I really don't care about any of that. What I care about are my kids and my grandkids. Who's going to be there to remind them of the gold standard of the Catholic Church? Who's going to be there to remind them they need to strengthen their faith? How? They need to get educated. Okay, no more willy-nilly Catholics. We're done with this nonsense. Learn your faith. It's such a great deposit of faith. And you actually have to be a warrior. I'm not trying to be a hero at the end of this, but I will say, when the History Channel had first come out, and if I wouldn't have been an accountant, I'd probably been a lawyer or an historian, because I love history, right? And I was really excited to hear there's going to be a channel on history, until I started realizing, oh, this is the same old stuff, right? They're twisting the truths. They're spinning history from a modern narrative. Sometimes they'll give you something like, yeah, that's pretty good, and then boom, they throw in some feminist comment, or they start attacking the church. It's classic. Always attack the church. Why? Because they know it's the real deal. And what happened was they came out with a series on Christ and Mary Magdalene, and they're making reference to the fact that the blessed Mary Magdalene and Christ had sexual relations. They kind of like just scooted in there. We're not saying, but we may, and that we're not saying, but we're saying kind of nonsense. And it was really an affront to me. And so I sued the History Channel, right? What was amazing about that is they had assigned 2 federal judges to my case. And the classic move. When they don't want to handle something, they will say you have no standing. We're seeing it today with the elections, right? Well, this is going back 10 years ago, and it was amazing that they assigned 2 judges, right? And maybe a little cautious about that. Well, they, right out of the box, boom, they hit me with, you have no standing. So I responded, I appealed that decision and said, wait a minute, I was born into the Catholic Church. I was baptized in the Catholic. I made my communion in the Catholic Church. I was confirmed in the Catholic Church. I was an altar boy for 5-6 years in the Catholic Church. I went from grade school to college in Catholic institutions, and I couldn't understand how I had no standing, and actually appealed that way. Did Martin Luther King represent the black community? He was just one person. What standing did he have, right? So I tried to hit him where it counts. That didn't work. So then I went to, at that time it was Bishop Worrell, who was the bishop over Pittsburgh, because that's where I had filed the lawsuit. And he didn't so much as even have the dignity to take a call. And I got a call from his receptionist saying, we want no involvement in this, you see. And I'm not trying to call out Bishop Worrell. Now he's a cardinal, retired, whatever. But I will say, through my experience as a Catholic, going all the way back, maybe I was impressed by a handful of priests, okay? And I learned at a very early age that we will be the defenders of the faith. We are going to have to put on the armor of the faith and defend this gold standard, right? So when I hear all this today, you know, I feel like Rip Van Winkle. I really do. I'm like, did I just wake up and then, you know, more than half of our faithful are gone? That if this was an army, you know, you look back and they're all running into the woods. We need our fighters back. So again, this is one of the other reasons where I thought this reboot of our faith is of utmost necessity, right? And I don't really care. I mean, I can tell I'm not getting a lot of hits on this, right? And it may do nothing other than allow me to profess the faith. And if that's all it does, then I'm good with Christ on this. I'll say, hey, you know, I'm trying to do the best I can with the limited resources I have. And that's kind of been the way it's been my whole Catholic life, right? My dad and I would go out and lead rosaries or lead novenas or take the statue of the Blessed Mother to houses. Didn't have any big resources. It was just word of mouth, and then the faithful would come. What is so amazing is that when we give what we can, Christ always blesses us and gives us more, right? Remember Bishop Sheen saying, when you thought you've done enough, if you think you've worked hard, keep going, work even harder, right? If fruits come from it, great. In the meantime, let's put on the armor. Let's forget about what's going on with this country. Honestly, after the last election results and this Congress, this phony Congress, approving that election with so much doubt. I just said to myself, I'm turning off all cable news. I'm turning off my government. It's a fraud. And I'm going to do what? I'm going to go back to my faith, because that's the only thing that matters. You know, if this whole country goes to hell in a handbasket, that's fine. But if we lose our souls, that is not fine, right? Let's be martyrs for the faith. It used to be like white martyrdom, right? So far in my life, all I've really experienced is white martyrdom. We may be getting to red martyrdom. And if that's it, boy, you can't ask for more, right? The other thing is, for many that say, well, I've been hurt by the religious. Yeah, it's terrible what's happened. I, too, was severely injured by the religious, and not in the way others have, but in word. Okay, I was destroyed several years ago, not by laity, by priests. Okay, so I could have turned and said, well, see, it's all phony. And no, they're men, and men will do what men will do. They will never take my faith from me. Matter of fact, in spite of them, I'm going to fight even harder. And when people say, well, who are you? You mean, you're not religious. Why do you do this podcast? I'm figuring, why not? I'm Catholic. Just like I told the courts, I'm Catholic. I got every right in the world to come out and say what the Catholic faith is. Now, I may not be as knowledgeable, but I will say, you know, I'm 60. I'm pretty good. You know, I'll go up against the best of them. I'm not a theologian, but I don't need a theologian right now. I need basics right now. I need to discuss Catholic catechism, which most of them are bored with. But that's why the church is falling apart. They're not preaching the faith as much as they should be anymore, right? And I had one priest tell me, he abandoned me. It wasn't too long ago, quite honestly. And he said, well, the optics just don't look good. And I said, Father, how about Christ optics? Okay, he was accused of being a blasphemer, right? He was accused of so many things that weren't true. Here is a priest worried about optics. You see what's happening? This modern culture has worked its way into even our religious orders. That priest should have shown that he was a good holy priest. Forget optics. Stand by me. Defend me. Man, it ain't happening. Health care is too important for them. Eating their 3 meals, having a place to live is more important to them. Us laity have to work hard at our duty of state. That's why I'm banking on us. And I'm not trashing the religious orders. We need them. We need the priests. Without them, there's no holy sacrifice. The Mass, the sacraments, we can't receive them. And will put them up on that. But I will also say, they came from good, holy parents. Okay? So, this is a long introduction. But I just wanted to throw that out there before getting into these councils, because it's like, number one, who are you to talk about councils? Number two, who are you to even start this podcast? And I'm saying, I'm starting this podcast and I'm going into the deep dives, and I'd love to be challenged. But better get our head on straight and start realizing we need to start learning our faith again. Okay, so let's go into it. We're gonna now. I had finished up, and what I started to do it, and with some of these podcasts, it gets a little tricky because as I'm putting them together, sometimes it's a little tough because trying to figure out the timing, and before you know it, I'm into them, and I just realized, wow. This is going to be way too long. This is going to be an hour. And nobody wants to listen to anything more than 20 minutes or so. So I'm picking up on the where we left off, which is the Lateran Council. So hold on a minute and I'll cue it up. Okay, so let's get started. So since I had such a long intro, and I apologize, the Spirit moved me. We're just going to discuss the 4 Lateran Councils, which kind of worked out well because I didn't want it to be too long anyway. All right, so the first Lateran Council was held in 1123 by Pope Calidus II, and I don't think it's necessary for me to read their reigns. I'll just list who the popes and emperors were. Emperor Henry V. The decision was to confirm the Concordat of Worms, which was issued in 1122, in which the Pope and the Emperor sought to end the dispute over investiture, which is, the investiture is the appointment of a religious. While this, the primary purpose of this was to limit the power that the state, or what we'd refer to as the secular king, had over the appointment of bishops, right, or the authority over appointing the bishops. The reason this was huge friction is you're seeing the church kind of flexing its muscles in the Middle Ages and saying, look, we can't possibly have the secular make decisions on appointments within the church. It compromises the church's authority. So it would be almost like, let's say, the United States were around back then, and the great power that they'd be able to appoint certain bishops. So we'd have, let's say, the current president appointing or influencing the appointment of bishops. Now, where we are seeing this exist today in the Catholic Church is China. China actually has that authority. I'm not sure how the popes allowed that, but I think just to keep peace, they're allowing the CCP to actually influence the local bishops in China. The 10th council was the Lateran II, which was started in 1139. It was Pope Innocent II and Emperor Conrad III. The decisions in this council were the end of a papal schism by anti-pope, because we all know the church had what they called anti-popes. What that means is that they weren't properly invested in as popes. That was Anacletus II. It reaffirmed baptism of infants. Prior to that, it was mostly would be not adults but adolescents. It reaffirmed the sacramental nature of the priesthood, the sacrament of marriage, and the Eucharist against the medieval heretics at that time. I'm going to have another episode, this is how they're created, on the heretics in the church. And the Eucharist against heretics decreed that the holy orders is an impediment to marriage, making the attempted marriage of a priest invalid. Again, this is an interesting topic as to when the church decided that priests should be celibate and not married. Number 11 is Lateran III, which was opened in 1179. At that time, it was Pope Alexander III and Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. The decisions of that council were regulated papal elections by requiring a 2/3 vote of the cardinals, almost like our 2/3 vote in our Congress. It condemned Waldensianism and Albigenism, a form of Manichaeanism, which is an ancient heresy that held that matter is evil. Albigenism opposed the authority of the state and of the church. It opposed the sacrament of matrimony and practiced ritual suicide. Despite these tenets, many anti-Catholics believed Albigensianism was the continuation of real Christianity during the Middle Ages and was a forerunner of Protestantism. Last but not least for this episode is the 12th Council, which was Lateran IV. It was opened in 1215. Pope Innocent III reigned at that time. Emperor Otto IV reigned at that time. The decisions were ordered annual reception of penance and the Eucharist, used the term, my favorite, substantiation to explain the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, adopted further canons against Albigenism. Okay, so if you look at this time, so we're talking the early 13th century, the 1200s. We already had the church taking a position on transubstantiation. Okay, I'm going to end this episode with this. And we will start with the 13th Council, which is the Council of Lyons, and it's actually Lyons I. Thank you, and God bless.